Welcome back to Rich Words Music, where today I have a fascinating guitar comparison for you guys. It's the 2024 Ibanez Iceman IC420 up against the Epiphone Les Paul. Now these two guitars on surface value might look like they couldn't be more different. I mean, look at the shape of the Iceman versus the classy, elegant aesthetic of the Les Paul. However, beyond the aesthetics, beyond the looks, these two guitars have a surprising number of similarities, and quite a few of you have asked me how similar are these two guitars really. Now this video sort of also came about because I watched my good friend Henning Pauli's video about the Iceman, and he says that it's the best Les Paul on the market for under $1,000. Now I'm not quite sure that I'd go that far, but what I want to do in this video is talk about the differences and the similarities between these two, play them both in a range of musical styles for you guys so you can hear how similar and how different they approach different musical genres. And maybe if you're in the market for a guitar with a couple of humbuckers like these two have, this video will be a bit of a help in aiding you in making the decision about what you should put on your shortlist to try. So what I'll do first is tell you about the specs and features of the two guitars, then I'll play them in as many different musical styles for you as I possibly can, and at the end I will give you a few more in-depth opinions about the two instruments, talk about which one is the best value for money, which one has the best shape and ergonomics and playing feel and so on, and well, I'll decide which one I would buy if I had to buy one of them again. So stick around for that, check the timestamps out in the description to find the parts of the video that will suit you best. But first let's go into those specs and features, and we'll start with the 2024 Ibanez Iceman. Now the Ibanez Iceman IC420 is a new guitar for 2024. It's part of Ibanez's 2024 catalogue, and it's the first Iceman that I've really spent a lot of time with, and it's been a revelation for me. I've done a separate video on the guitar if you really want to see a deep dive on it, but this guitar surprised me and exceeded my expectations on so many levels. Now it's made in China. It'll set you back around $750 or 699 euros depending on where you live, and it comes with a gig bag too, so it's decent value for money in the current mid-priced guitar sort of sector. And it's an Iceman, so it looks like this. It's got this bulbous lower horn and this really cool rock and roll looking body, and the Iceman is kind of a guitar that I've always pigeonholed into the genres of hard rock and heavy metal and stuff like that. But if you've watched my deep dive individual video about this guitar, you'll know that it's way more versatile than that, and it's a hugely ergonomic and easy to play guitar too, and it was so much fun for me that, long story short, I don't want to give it back to Ibanez because they loaned it to me to make some videos. But anyway, what do you get for your money with this guitar? Well, like I said, it'll be 750 of your US dollars or 699 euros, and you get this lovely antique blue metallic finish. Now there is also an option to pay $50 or euros more to get a flamed maple top in a violin sunburst finish if you want to go for that, but otherwise the two guitars are identical, and that means that under the finish you have an okume body and an okume neck, and you've got binding to the body and the neck too. You've got that really big tummy cut there on the back, and you can see here that we have a set neck too with great upper fret access as well. So it's a really unique looking guitar, the Iceman, and it gives you an amazing sense of being something of a rock star as soon as you pick it up. But when you start looking at the hardware and the fittings and the neck specifications too, you start to realize that we do have some similarities to a Les Paul, and that starts with the pickups. We have two Ibanez Super 80 ceramic humbuckers here, complete with the iconic flying finger decal that those pickups have always had. Now we've got a three-way selector switch to move between those pickups, and each of the pickups has its own volume and tone control too, just like you'd expect to see on any standard Gibson or Epiphone Les Paul. The similarities also continue at the bridge tailpiece here. We've got Ibanez's Gibraltar Performer bridge and their quick change 3 tailpiece here, and you'll see that these are very similar to what you'd expect from the Tune-o-matic bridge and the stopbar tailpiece of a Les Paul, just like on the Epiphone in this video. In fact, one more flip around to the back so you can see the back of that huge body there, and of course you can see that the body on this guitar is much larger than that of the Les Paul. Moving up to the neck though, and we have yet more similarities to the Les Paul. Now this guitar doesn't have a really thin Ibanez Wizard neck, it actually has Ibanez's IC neck, and that presumably stands for Iceman, and this is a middle standard C sort of a shape, almost getting a bit chunky as you move up to the top end. It's got a poly finish too, and it really feels like a Les Paul neck to me. Now on the front you've got a reddish Jatoba fingerboard wood. We've also got 22 frets, as as you would see on a Les Paul too normally, although these are medium frets. You'd normally get medium jumbos on a Les Paul. We've got a 43mm nut though, and a 24 3/4 inch scale length too, alongside a 305mm fingerboard radius. That's about 12 inches, so again, nice and flat like a Les Paul's too. And moving up to the headstock, of course the Les Paul and the Iceman headstocks look very different, but again, they're sort of similar because they're angled in that sort of a way, and you've got 3 tuners on either side. In this case, Ibanez's own tuners, not locking tuners or anything like that. So this is the 2024 Ibanez Iceman IC420. Now let's look at my Epiphone Les Paul. And this is my trusty Epiphone Les Paul Traditional Pro. This is a made in China 2014 model that I bought new in 2014, and it cost me, with an Epiphone hard case included, the grand sum of 330 euros. So about half the price of the Iceman back in the day, but in 2024 you're probably going to be paying $600, $650 to $700 or so for an Epiphone Les Paul, or even more for some of the inspired by Gibson ones, some of their 59 ones for example. So similar sort of price points between a Les Paul and the 2024 Iceman. Now this is a traditional Pro model, so it has that kind of Les Paul 50s sort of a spec to it, as much as Epiphone could have done anyway. And that means a mahogany body and a mahogany neck with a rosewood fingerboard, and we also have a flame maple top on this one. It's not going to be a solid thick cap like you'd expect on a Gibson, but a maple top nonetheless. And we have these super cool zebra Epiphone humbuckers on this guitar. In the neck we have the Epiphone Al Nico Classic humbucker, and in the bridge we have the Epiphone Pro Bucker 3. These humbuckers are both splittable, so I can use the volume controls, I can push and pull them to go to split coil modes, but we're not going to feature that in this video really. Plenty of other videos on my channel with this guitar if you'd like to hear the split coils in action. But just like the Iceman, 3-way selector switch, a volume and a tone control for each of the pickups, and again the Les Paul Tune-o-matic bridge and stop bar tailpiece operation here. This guitar is a traditional Pro, so it has a glossy body, but the rest of it is satin and black, and I love that about this guitar because I love a satin neck on a guitar, and this one just feels like home. Now the neck is mahogany, like I said. We've got this rosewood fingerboard, 22 medium jumbo frets, and the rest of the specs very similar to the Iceman. 43mm bone nut, 24 3/4 inch scale length, and a 12-inch fingerboard radius. Now all of the specs online will tell you that this guitar had a slim taper D Epiphone profile, but it doesn't. It's way chunkier than that. It's a thickish C-shaped neck, slightly thicker than that of the Iceman down at the bottom end, but similar feeling when you get up to the soloing sort of territory. It's a really nice comfy neck, and satin too. And I've played this guitar for thousands of hours over the last 10 years, and it really feels like home to me. Moving up to the headstock, blacked out again here, and we've got Grover tuners on this one. So this is my 2014 Epiphone Les Paul Traditional Pro, and this is the 2024 Ibanez IC420. And next what we're going to do is play these two guitars together and hear how similar and how different they sound. So my rig for today is going to be my Hughes & Kettner Black Spirit 200 amp head. We'll be running from the Redbox out straight into my recording software. We'll make use of most of the channels on the amp and also a couple of my drive pedals just to get a few different flavors of tones with the two guitars, and we'll play them in as many different genres and varieties of sounds as I can muster up. Now like I said before, timestamps down there if you'd like to skip to any of the different sections, if you want to hear clean tones or crunchy classic rock sounds or even downtuned metal stuff, it's all in here. Enough talk though, let's play the two guitars now and we'll speak in a bit more detail about them afterwards. Okay then, so that was the Ibanez Iceman up against the Epiphone Les Paul in a series of riff tests and comparisons, and I hope you enjoyed the playing and the tones. Now it's time for you to leave me a comment down there telling me which of the two guitars you preferred. Were you more of an Iceman fan, or do you prefer the classic timeless elegance of the Les Paul? Comments down there, let's get a discussion going. But now what I want to do is give you a few more of my detailed opinions about these two guitars. I've owned the Epiphone Les Paul for over 10 years now, and I've played it so much in that time. I've had the Iceman on loan now for a few weeks from Ibanez Germany. I don't want to give it back, but I've played it very much since then. It's a lot of fun, and it's basically the guitar that I pick up over any other since I've had it. So like I said, I've played them both a lot, and I have quite a bit to say about them. But if you're someone who's kind of choosing between these two and wondering how similar or how different they are, well, that's what we'll get into now, and I'll tell you which one I think wins in a variety of tests and challenges. So the first thing that I think you'd look at when considering a guitar like this is going to be the looks and also the price. Now the Iceman of course has its own very, very identifiable design. You can't mistake an Iceman, that's for sure. So if you like it, you will probably love it and therefore want to choose an Iceman. And the Les Paul, well, it's a Les Paul. They're ubiquitous in the world of music. You'll either love the shape or find it boring, I would imagine. I love the shape. I find it very comfortable, very ergonomic, very easy to play. And the Les Paul is also a guitar that you can see going with everything. You could turn up to a jazz gig with one, a country gig, a rock gig, a metal gig, and anything in between all of those genres. Now the Iceman, as I've proved in the various videos I've made with it so far, and you can see from other players on YouTube as well, it's actually an amazingly versatile guitar as well, and it can play any kind of music. However, because of the looks, I think it's possibly one that you wouldn't take to a jazz gig or a country gig or something like that. Or maybe you would. Let me know in the comments if you do. But in terms of looks, it's going to be totally down to your personal preference with regards to which one you prefer. For me right now, if I had to pick on looks, I'd pick the Iceman because I'm in the honeymoon phase with this one. But over the decades that I've played guitar, well, I have to say that overall I've spent more time thinking about Les Pauls in terms of body shapes. So they're both great, both work for totally different things. The next thing that I would look at would be the pricing of the two guitars. Now these are both made in China, and as I've already said, the Iceman will set you back $750 or about 699 euros, and it comes with a gig bag too. These days, that's fairly decent value for money, and considering all the specs and the hardware that you get and everything else about this guitar, how fun it is and how awesome it is to play, well, I think that's more than worth it. 10 years ago, I paid 330 euros, so less than half the price, for the Epiphone Les Paul Traditional Pro with a decent Epiphone hard case. But these days, you're going to be paying somewhere similar to Iceman prices for a new Epiphone Les Paul. Some of them are going to be slightly cheaper, some of them are going to be the same, and some of them are going to be more expensive. So in terms of price, we're pretty much neck and neck at this point. They're both very good value for money and both do a lot. So again, take your pick there, which one you think is better in the value for money stakes. Now, the next thing that I would want to look at in terms of which is better is going to be the build quality and the hardware. Now, a caveat, of course, I've had the Epiphone Les Paul for 10 years and it's had numerous pro level setups in that time, and it's had a bone nut fitted too. So in that regard, of course, it's fantastic for me and it plays really, really well. But it played really well straight out of the case. I still remember that from 10 years ago as well. And there are things on it, like the rosewood fingerboard, that you don't get with most current Epiphone Les Pauls. So that's a very cool thing as well. You've also got the Grover tuners, the Epiphone pickups. That's a really well put together guitar, and it feels great having been played in for thousands of hours since I've owned it. Now, the Ibanez Iceman is similar to all of the other Ibanez guitars that I've tried over the past couple of years, and that is pretty much exemplary in terms of the build quality and the hardware and the feel of it straight out of the box, or in this case, the gig bag. Now, it's mostly Ibanez hardware on this one, but all of it feels fantastic and does a great job. The Ibanez tuners, very solid. The neck's been done really well. The action and intonation and playability, all spot on straight out of the box. You've got the Gibraltar Performer bridge and the quick change 3 tailpiece. These are great. The Super 80s humbuckers are fantastic too. The controls and everything do their job with no issues whatsoever. You know with Ibanez that you're never going to have a problem, and I find that fantastic about the brand. One other thing that I'd want to talk about in this regard would be the weight of the two guitars. Now, you'd expect the Iceman to be a weighty guitar given its girth, given its size, given this bulbous lower horn, and this one is a weighty beast. It's 3.82 kilograms, which is just under 8.5 pounds, or there and thereabouts. And while that's a decent weight, and actually a pretty decent weight for a Les Paul, it doesn't feel that heavy because it's such a large guitar. It feels right. It feels solid, and it just works really well. It balances really well on a strap too if you're playing standing up, so no problems there with the weight. Surprisingly enough, my Epiphone Les Paul is just a tad heavier. My specific one weighs in at 3.87 kilograms, which is just over 8.5 pounds. Again, a very decent weight for a Les Paul, but it feels heavier because overall it's a smaller looking guitar. So make of that what you will. I'm personally somebody who likes a slightly lighter guitar, and I would say that the Ibanez wins in that regard. But you might be someone who likes a nice weighty Les Paul strapped around your shoulders, and you might prefer it to be even heavier than the two examples here. Now the next thing that I would talk about would be the playability of the two guitars, and again the Iceman really surprised me with how ergonomic it is, how easy it is to play too, because I never expected it to be that good in terms of playability. But you've got great upper fret access, and the design of the guitar just makes it a dream to play, which is really not what I'd expected before I got this one out of the box. Now the biggest difference in the playability between these two is going to be actually in the necks, surprisingly enough. They're both medium C-shaped, the Epiphone is slightly chunkier, but the one big difference there is that for me the Epiphone wins because of its satin finish to the neck. This is going to be a personal taste thing too, but you've got a poly finish on the back of the Iceman. It's not sticky or anything like that, but I would always tend towards a satin neck if I can get one. Now apart from that, of course, the Les Paul's playability is a Les Paul. It's a chunky mahogany body, you've got that carved top, it's very comfy for some people and not for others. But in terms of the overall playability, I'm just going to give the very slightest of edges to the Les Paul, and that's because of the satin finish on the back of that wonderful neck. And the next thing to talk about is the sounds of the two guitars, and because of the looks of the guitar, again, you probably would expect the Super 80 humbuckers in the Iceman to be made for metal and high gain stuff and hard rock, to be super high output, but they're actually not. I actually think the pickups in my Epiphone Les Paul are hotter than those in the Iceman. To me, the Iceman pickups sound like traditional Les Paul pickups, like PAFs with a bit more bite and oomph. They're really amazing sounding pickups, and they're super versatile too. And you'll have heard throughout the playing samples that both of these guitars are perfectly suited for everything from the cleanest of cleans and warm jazzy sort of stuff through to country and that sort of thing. When we kicked in the Greer Lightspeed, we got some amazing indie rock and alternative rock tones on both guitars, and when we went up to harder rock sort of territory and down into drop D with the Rev G3, well, both of these guitars are great for that too. They both offer a really decent clarity in terms of humbuckers, so they're great for palm muting and chugging, that kind of stuff, and they give you that nice aggressive rock tone for hard rock, for punk rock, for alternative rock, and stuff like that. It's true that with a Les Paul you can play pretty much everything, but with an Iceman you can do it too. Now the pickups do sound very, very similar, especially when you add more gain, when they're virtually interchangeable at times, but overall I do feel like the Epiphone has a little bit more girth than the Iceman, and the Iceman has perhaps a little bit more of a biting top end. But maybe you guys hear it differently. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Overall though, in terms of tones, well, I'm loving both of these guitars. There is a little bit of an edge for the Epiphone because of the coil split, and I do use that quite a lot when I'm noodling around with that guitar at home. But ask me which guitar I prefer at the moment, and like I've already said in the video, this is the one I'm picking up over any other. So we'll go with the Ibanez Iceman in terms of tones for now. And that leads me to the conclusion of this video. Is the Ibanez Iceman just a Les Paul with a radically different body shape? I don't think it is. I think it has its own thing going on completely, and I think it's a bit unfair just to call it a Les Paul with a different body shape because it has its own identity. However, it does sound very similar to a Les Paul in many contexts, and you could use it to do pretty much anything a Les Paul can do. So make of that what you will. Which one is the better guitar? Which one would you choose? Which one would I choose? Well, that's a very tough question. I'm loving the Iceman right now, and I'm picking it up over all of my other guitars every time I come to play here at home. I've had the Les Paul for 10 years and I love it. It feels like home when I pick it up, and it works for everything I ever want to do with it. So it's a fantastic instrument, and I actually wouldn't want to live without either of them. So it comes down to other factors as well, like aesthetics. I definitely feel like I could take the Les Paul anywhere, but I would think twice about taking the Ibanez Iceman to certain gigs or certain other situations too, because it just gives such a vibe in terms of the way it looks, and people may or may not unfairly pigeonhole you into certain genres just because you use a guitar like this. I don't think that's fair, and I think that the Iceman is a much loved guitar in cult circles, but it probably gets an unfair rap from certain people who think it can't do classic country or it can't do low gain tones, because it really, really can. Now, if I didn't own either of these guitars and I had to buy one right now, to be honest, I'd go for the Iceman. I have other single cut Les Paul type guitars at home and I get very great tones out of those as well. I do love my Epiphone Les Paul, and I'm never getting rid of that guitar, but yeah, if I was going to be getting one these days, I'd try the Iceman and probably go for that one. That said, one more final caveat: of course there are so many different Epiphone Les Pauls out there. There's different pickups, different wood options, different finishes, different kinds of fingerboards, differences in pretty much any aspect. So if you want a certain Les Paul that's going to fit to you, well, you're definitely going to be able to find it. In terms of the Iceman, they're much more limited. There's a couple of other Paul Stanley models. There's the Paul Gilbert Fireman type guitars, and there are older Icemen that you can find on used sites, but you're much more limited in terms of the Iceman. You'll find a Les Paul or a Les Paul type guitar in any music store you walk into, and not just by Epiphone or Gibson. There's many other brands too. I hope that this video has answered all of the questions that you might have had about the Iceman, and also any questions you might have had about the Iceman versus the Les Paul. And if you're looking for any guitars like this in the future, I hope that this video might have helped you in making your decision a little bit as well. If you've got any more questions though, drop me a line down there in the comments and I shall answer to the very best of my ability. And hey, if you're still around, it would make my day if you wanted to give the video a like, or maybe even subscribe to my little channel, because that really does help. But that's been it for today's video. I've been Rich for Rich Words Music, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.